The marriage was for peace, until the human fought like a god of war. The great halls of the Erythian palace gleamed under the twin suns of Virus 7, their golden light reflecting off walls carved from shining crystal. Everywhere the sounds of preparation for the grand ceremony echoed. The clinking of armor, the soft rustle of silken robes, the low hum of excited chatter among diplomats and courtiers. Today was a day that could change the course of history. Lyra stood at the palace balcony, her dark eyes scanning the horizon where the Zalvar fleet would soon arrive. The wind from the high towers tossed her hair around her face, but she barely noticed. She had learned to ignore distractions. In her short 23 years, she had faced countless challenges, and every trial had made her sharper, faster, stronger. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, and she intended to use that to her advantage. The marriage arranged between her and the Zalvar prince Vaylor was not born of love. It was born of necessity. For centuries, the Erythians and Zalvar had fought over planets, resources, and pride. Entire civilizations had been destroyed in their endless wars, yet still, neither side could claim victory. Finally, their leaders had agreed. A union through marriage could secure peace. Lyra's thoughts were interrupted by the approach of her personal aide, a young Erythian named Kale. He was eager, loyal, and always carried a small notebook where he jotted down observations, sometimes even advice for Lyra. "Your Highness," Kale said, bowing low. "The fleet is approaching. The Zalvar ambassador arrives in less than an hour. Are you ready?" Lyra turned from the balcony, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Ready?" she asked. "Kale, readiness is not a question. It is a state of mind. I am always ready." Kale smiled, though he did not doubt her words. Humans, he thought, had a strange courage, almost reckless at times, but it often saved lives. The sound of engines and the soft vibration in the ground told them the fleet had arrived. Dozens of sleek black ships descended from the sky, each one shaped unlike any Erythian design. The Zalvar were a proud and disciplined people, and their fleet reflected that. As the largest ship landed in the palace courtyard, the ramp slowly lowered, revealing tall figures in deep red uniforms. At the head of the group was Prince Vaylor. He moved with the elegance of a predator and the confidence of a ruler. His skin was pale, almost silver, and his eyes, a deep violet, scanned the crowd like a hunter seeking prey. When his gaze landed on Lyra, he inclined his head slightly, an acknowledgement of her presence. There was no warmth in his expression, but that did not matter. The marriage was a tool, nothing more. Lyra stepped forward to meet him as the ceremonial attendants guided her down from the balcony. She felt the eyes of the court upon her, some curious, some judgmental, others openly mocking. They whispered about the human bride, fragile, weak, untested in the ways of the galaxy's true powers. They did not know her, nor had they seen what humans were capable of when pushed. Prince Vaylor extended a hand, and Lyra shook it firmly. His grip was strong, but she was stronger than he expected. A flicker of surprise passed across his features before he masked it with his usual composed expression. The ceremony began with speeches, blessings from the galaxy's spiritual leaders, and the exchange of carefully chosen gifts. Lyra wore a gown of shimmering white and gold, designed by Erythian artisans to symbolize unity. She could feel the weight of her new role pressing down on her, but she held her head high. After the formalities, the new couple was escorted to the banquet hall. The room was vast, filled with long tables laden with delicacies from both empires. Aromas of roasted meats, exotic spices, and sweet fruits mingled in the air. Lyra sat beside Vaylor, noting every detail of the room, every glance from the Zalvar nobility. Observation was her weapon. The conversation began formally, filled with polite words and ceremonial phrases. Lyra spoke carefully, each word measured, showing respect but also intelligence. Vaylor listened, occasionally nodding, occasionally asking questions, but he remained distant. She knew this was a test. How would a human handle alien customs and alien expectations? As the evening progressed, tension began to rise beneath the polished surface. Some courtiers were not content with a marriage for peace. They wanted conquest. They muttered under their breaths about how fragile humans were and how easily the alliance could collapse. Lyra heard some of the whispers but did not react. Instead, she noted their positions, the sounds of their voices, and the way their eyes darted toward her. Information was power, and she was gathering it silently. Hours passed. Music filled the hall and dancers moved in flowing patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. Lyra's gaze, however, remained sharp. Her instincts told her that appearances were deceiving, and she was right. As the banquet drew to a close, a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance. Two masked figures tried to push through the crowd, weapons hidden beneath their robes. Panic swept the room, and guests shrieked as servants scrambled to contain the threat. Lyra did not hesitate. With a human's quick reflexes, she leapt from her seat and intercepted one of the attackers. Her movements were precise, honed from years of training in combat and self-defense. She twisted his arm, sent him sprawling, and disarmed him in a single motion. The other attacker lunged at Valor, but Lyra blocked him with a flying kick, sending the man crashing into a table. The palace guards rushed forward, but they were too slow to act first. Lyra stood between the attackers and the prince, her chest heaving but her eyes steady. The hall fell silent, the shocked courtiers staring at the human bride who had just defended the Zalvar heir with unparalleled skill. Valor's eyes widened slightly, though he quickly recovered. He bowed his head slightly in acknowledgement. "I underestimated you," he said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. Lyra offered a small, controlled smile. "You should never underestimate humans," she replied calmly. After the attackers were restrained and the guards secured, whispers spread like wildfire. The courtiers who had mocked her were now hesitant, uncertain. Humans were not supposed to move like this, fight like this, or survive such confrontations unscathed. Lyra had planted the first seed of doubt in their minds. Later, when she returned to her chambers, Kale waited for her. "Are you unharmed?" he asked, concern in his voice. "I am fine," Lyra said, removing her ceremonial cloak. "But we are far from safe. The Zalvar court has many who would see this alliance fail, and they will test me again. They will test all humans if they think we are weak." Kale nodded. "Then they will see that humans are not so easily defeated." Lyra allowed herself a small smile. "Good, let them see. Let them doubt us. Doubt is a weakness they cannot afford to have." The night passed with restless sleep. Lyra dreamed of stars and battles, of strategies and alliances. She dreamed of a galaxy where humans were no longer underestimated, where their courage and adaptability could shape the fate of entire worlds. When dawn arrived, Lyra looked out from the palace balcony once again. The Zalvar ships had returned to orbit, and Valor awaited the day's audience with her. She knew the path ahead would be filled with deception, intrigue, and danger. But she was ready. Humans had survived against impossible odds for millennia. A few alien courtiers would not break her. And in the quiet of her heart, Lyra felt a fire burn, a fire that would not only protect her, but one day might force the galaxy to remember the name of humanity. For now, the marriage was for peace. But Lyra knew this. When humans were pushed, when cornered, when underestimated, they fought like gods. The morning sun cast long beams across the palace of the Zalvar, a towering structure of black metal and crystal that gleamed even brighter than the Erythian palace. The city below bustled with activity. Hovercrafts darted through the sky lanes, merchants shouted their goods in the streets, and citizens of all shapes and colors went about their business. Lyra walked through the hallways of her new home, her long gown brushing the polished floor. Though she had been treated as a guest during the formal ceremonies, today was different. Today, she was expected to take her place among the Zalvar nobility. She had been warned that the court was full of intrigue, that not every smile was sincere, and that many eyes would watch her for weakness. Kale, ever her shadow, walked beside her. "Remember, Your Highness," he whispered. "Every glance, every word, they all mean something here." "Pay attention," Lyra nodded. Humans had a natural curiosity and an instinct for survival. She had learned quickly how to read expressions, how to notice small gestures that betrayed intentions. In a court like this, those skills could mean life or death. Their first stop was the audience hall, where Prince Valor awaited. The hall was immense, with ceilings high above, supported by columns of shimmering black stone. Zalvar nobles lined the sides, their eyes studying Lyra like a scientist observing a rare specimen. She could feel the weight of their judgment, but she did not flinch. Valor stood at the head of the room, tall and composed as always. He gestured for Lyra to join him. "The morning is young," he said, his voice calm, "and already the court stirs with questions." "How are you, my bride?" Lyra bowed slightly. "I am well, Prince Valor, and ready to learn the ways of your people." The nobles murmured among themselves. "She claims to be ready," one whispered, "but can a human truly understand Zalvar ways?" Lyra caught the words as she often did and made a mental note. Doubt was an advantage. Let them doubt her. She could turn it into a weapon. The day began with lessons in etiquette, customs, and the intricate politics of the Zalvar court. Every gesture had meaning, every word could hide an intention, and every choice she made would be analyzed. Lyra listened carefully, asked precise questions, and made suggestions that impressed some nobles and unsettled others. During a break, she wandered into the palace gardens. The gardens were enormous, filled with strange plants that glowed faintly and flowers that emitted soft, musical tones when touched. She felt a small sense of peace here, away from the scrutiny of the court. But peace was fleeting. A sudden rustling from behind a row of tall, silver-leafed trees made her turn. A shadow moved quickly, and before she could react, a small blade flashed toward her. Lyra's instincts took over. She sidestepped, grabbed the attacker's wrist, and twisted. The figure stumbled and fell to the ground. Pulling back the hood, she revealed a young noblewoman, her face pale with shock. You attacked me?" Lyra asked calmly. The girl's voice trembled. I was sent to test you, to see if humans are truly weak, as they say." Lyra released her hold but kept her eyes sharp. "And what did you learn?" The girl's eyes widened. You are stronger, faster, more dangerous than any of us imagined." Lyra let out a small, controlled smile. "Then perhaps it is time the court remembers that humans are not to be underestimated." Word of the incident spread quickly, though the details were carefully hidden. Still, whispers reached every corner of the palace. Humans, it seemed, were more capable than many had believed. The day continued with more lessons and audiences. Lyra observed carefully. Some nobles were openly hostile, offering subtle threats disguised as advice. Others were curious, approaching her with questions about Earth, her experiences, and the strange customs of her people. She answered them all with honesty and intelligence, earning respect in ways the Zalvar had not anticipated. By the afternoon, Vaylor summoned her to a private chamber. The room overlooked the city, with light spilling across black stone streets and silver towers. "You handled the test well," Vaylor said, his eyes studying her. "Not all humans could have reacted as you did in the gardens." Lyra inclined her head. "I have learned that underestimating your opponent can be fatal, and humans are very good at surviving." Vaylor's lips curved slightly. "Indeed, perhaps you will teach me more than I thought today." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert from the palace security. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She had felt it, an unusual shift in energy, a tension in the air that was hard to ignore. Guards entered, bowing quickly. "Your Highness, there are signs of a plot against the Alliance," one said. "Some nobles are planning a strike, an attack meant to destabilize the peace." Lyra's mind raced. The first attempt on her life had been crude, meant to test. Now the threat was more serious. She turned to Vaylor. "We must act carefully. If we reveal too much, the conspirators will hide. If we act too slowly, they could succeed." Vaylor nodded. "You are wise, human. We will need subtlety and strategy." Over the next few hours, Lyra and Vaylor worked together, devising ways to monitor the nobles without alerting them. They used hidden passages, discreet signals, and loyal servants who could report movements. Lyra's human intuition complemented the Zalvar's technology and discipline, creating a network of observation that was nearly invisible. That evening, during a grand dinner, tension thickened. Several nobles lingered near Lyra, offering compliments that were laced with veiled threats. She listened politely, her mind noting every word, every glance, every slight movement. When one particularly arrogant noble tried to trip her subtly with a loose floor panel, she caught his wrist without anyone noticing and held it just long enough to make him stumble slightly. The man's face went pale as he realized the human bride was not to be toyed with. Vaylor watched quietly, impressed. "You are not just a diplomat," he said under his breath. "You are a force." Lyra's eyes met his, calm but firm. "We will need more than diplomacy to survive here," she replied. After the dinner, Lyra returned to her chambers, tired but alert. Kale was waiting. "Do you think they will try again?" he asked. Lyra nodded. "They will. Anyone who seeks power will test the limits. We must be ready, and they must not see fear, hesitation, or weakness. That is a human's strength. They will never know what we are capable of until it is too late." The next day, Lyra began training with the palace guards, learning Zalvar combat techniques, which were unlike anything she had ever encountered. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, but predictable in ways humans could exploit. Lyra adapted quickly, combining her speed and creativity with their methods. She learned to wield their weapons, which glowed with energy, and discovered that humans could find unexpected angles and strategies in every fight. Even as she trained, her mind worked on politics. She began identifying potential allies among the nobles, those who were cautious but honorable, and those who might be persuaded to support peace if shown wisdom and strength. Lyra understood that survival in this court required both power and cunning. Weeks passed, and the plot against her remained hidden, but Lyra could feel its threads pulling taut. One evening, she overheard a conversation between two nobles in the garden corridors. They spoke of plans to challenge the Alliance to make her fail publicly to embarrass both her and Valor. Lyra did not panic. Instead, she smiled. They underestimate humans once again, she thought. They will soon learn that courage, intelligence, and determination can turn the tide. That night, as she looked out over the city lights of the Zalvar capital, she felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever. This marriage, meant only for peace, had become a battlefield in itself, a battlefield of wits, strategy, and strength, and Lyra was determined to win. Humans had always been underestimated. But in this court, under the twin moons of Zalvar, Lyra would show them that humans were capable of more than diplomacy. Humans could survive, thrive, and fight against impossible odds. And the court would not soon forget the day the human bride walked among them, not just as a symbol of peace, but as a force to be reckoned with. The tension in the Zalvar court had grown thicker over the weeks. Lyra could feel it in the way the nobles moved around her, the way whispers followed her from one corridor to the next, the way their eyes watched her every action. Even the smallest misstep could be twisted into a reason to question the Alliance, to declare the human bride a failure. Lyra had learned to move with grace and caution, yet she refused to appear timid. Humans, she knew, had a strength beyond physical power, adaptability. She could read situations, predict movements, and act where others hesitated. And now, that skill would be tested more than ever. The morning began with a council meeting in the Grand Chamber. Prince Valor presided, his expression calm but his eyes sharp. Lyra sat beside him, as always, her posture straight, her gaze steady. Around the chamber, Zalvar nobles debated fiercely about the border worlds. Small skirmishes had broken out along the edges of the Alliance, and blame was tossed back and forth like sparks from a fire. One noble, Lord Ralver, leaned forward. "The Erithians are weak," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "They cannot control their borders. If we do not act, their world will fall and the Alliance will crumble." Lyra's eyes narrowed. She had heard this kind of talk before. The human strength was doubted at every turn, but she also knew that words were a weapon if used correctly. "Lord Ralver," she said calmly, "Erithians may not be Zalvar, but they have defended their worlds for centuries. Underestimating them, or underestimating humans, would be a grave mistake." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some nobles bristled at her words, others glanced at Valor, seeking his reaction. The prince remained silent, but Lyra saw the faintest hint of approval in his eyes. He had learned something that day. Humans were not so easily intimidated. The council meeting ended with little resolution. Border skirmishes continued, and the sense of urgency in the air was palpable. Lyra knew that the situation could escalate into full-scale war at any moment, and if it did, she would need to be ready, not just as a diplomat, but as a fighter. That afternoon, she returned to the training halls. The Zalvar weapons were unlike any she had used before, sleek, powered by energy fields, and capable of striking with incredible speed. The palace guards moved with precise, almost mechanical efficiency. Lyra studied them carefully, learning patterns, weaknesses, and timing. At first, it was difficult. Their attacks were swift, almost impossible to predict. But humans had an advantage the Zalvar did not: creativity. Lyra began to blend her natural instincts with their techniques, turning predictable movements into traps. She could anticipate their strikes, counter them, and use their own strength against them. Weeks of training passed, and Lyra's skill grew. What had once been a polite observation by the court now became something more dangerous. Rumors spread quietly. The human bride was not just clever, she was formidable. Even nobles who had once mocked her began to treat her with a mix of caution and curiosity. One evening, while walking through the palace corridors, Lyra overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. Two nobles were discussing a coordinated attack on the Erythian capital. They planned to strike during a festival when defenses would be low and blame the human bride for failing to prevent it. Lyra's mind raced. If they succeeded, the fragile alliance would shatter and war would erupt across the galaxy. She could not allow it. That night she gathered her closest allies, Kale, some loyal Zalvar guards, and a few cautious nobles who had begun to see her wisdom. Together, they planned a covert operation to uncover the full extent of the conspiracy. Every step had to be precise. Every movement had to avoid detection. Under the cover of darkness, Lyra and her team moved through hidden passages beneath the palace. The tunnels were narrow, lit only by faint luminescent strips in the walls. Lyra's heart pounded, but she kept her expression calm. Fear was a luxury she could not afford. They reached a hidden chamber where the conspirators met. Lyra peered through a small opening and saw them discussing maps, strategies, and supplies for the attack. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to think clearly. Knowledge was power, and she had the advantage of surprise. "Do you see them?" whispered Kale. Lyra nodded. "Yes, and soon they will learn that humans are not so easy to defeat." The plan was simple but risky. Using small energy devices, they could silently disable the room's communication systems and alert the palace guards without revealing themselves. Lyra gave the signal, and within moments, the conspirators realized too late that their secret meeting had been compromised. Guards flooded in, and the nobles who had plotted against the alliance were captured. The chamber echoed with shouts, confusion, and panic. Lyra stepped forward, her presence commanding. "Your plans have failed," she said firmly. "The alliance will not be broken by deceit or treachery, and humans are not as weak as you believed." The captured nobles glared at her, shock and anger in their eyes. Lyra ignored them. Her job was not to punish. They would face the council, but to protect the fragile peace she had sworn to uphold. The next day, news of the thwarted plot spread across the palace and the capital. Some nobles whispered that the human bride had saved the alliance from disaster. Others muttered doubts, unwilling to admit their misjudgment. But one thing was certain: Lyra had proven herself. Even Valor, who had once been distant, began to respect her in ways that went beyond politics. He observed her carefully during meetings, training sessions, and strategic discussions. He noted her ability to combine human intuition with logic and strategy, her courage under pressure, and her unwavering focus. As the days passed, border skirmishes escalated despite their efforts to maintain peace. Small attacks were launched by factions who opposed the alliance, hoping to ignite a larger war. Lyra worked tirelessly to coordinate defenses, train troops, and anticipate enemy moves. Her human creativity allowed her to devise strategies that no Zalvar general had considered: ambush points, rapid response squads, and diversion tactics that kept the enemy off balance. One night, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A fleet of Zalvar rebels had attacked a remote Erythian settlement, intending to make a statement. The settlement was small but strategically important. Lyra and Valor immediately devised a plan. Lyra led a strike team composed of both humans and Zalvar soldiers. They moved swiftly, using small transport ships to reach the settlement before the rebels expected them. Lyra's mind raced as she calculated angles of attack, escape routes, and the best way to minimize casualties while maximizing impact. The battle was brief but intense. Lyra fought at the front, her movements precise, her instincts sharp. She anticipated enemy strikes, countered them, and inspired the soldiers around her. The rebels, confident that humans were weak, were caught off guard by her speed, strategy, and determination. By the end of the skirmish, the settlement was secure. The rebels were defeated, captured, or driven away. Soldiers from both empires cheered, their morale boosted by the unexpected display of human leadership and skill. Lyra stood among them, breathing heavily, but her eyes shone with the fire of triumph. Word of her actions spread quickly across the border worlds. Humans, once considered fragile and unimportant, were now seen as capable, cunning, and courageous. The alliance, fragile though it was, gained new respect for the human bride. But Lyra knew the work was far from over. The spark of war had been ignited, and larger battles were inevitable. The nobles who opposed her would continue plotting. Rebels would strike again. And she would need to fight not just with weapons, but with strategy, diplomacy, and the indomitable will of a human who refused to be underestimated. That evening, As she looked out over the borderlands from the palace balcony, Lyra felt a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and opportunities, but humans had survived against impossible odds for centuries. They had adapted, fought, and thrived where others failed, and she would continue that legacy. Not just for herself, not just for her marriage, but for humanity and the fragile peace that now rested on her shoulders. The spark of war had been lit, and Lyra, the human bride, would ensure that it did not consume the galaxy. Instead, it would burn bright enough to show that humans, underestimated though they were, could rise to meet any challenge and sometimes exceed even the greatest expectations. The war had begun. What started as small skirmishes along the border worlds had grown into full-scale attacks. The Zalvar rebels were bold, striking cities and outposts, testing the strength of the alliance. Lyra, the human bride, had become the unexpected symbol of resistance, a force that no one had anticipated. The sun had not yet risen over the Erythian capital when alarms rang across the palace. Lyra was already awake, her sharp instincts alert. She slipped into her training clothes, moving with quiet precision through the corridors. Guards and aides were preparing for the worst, but Lyra's mind raced ahead, thinking of strategies, maneuvers, and the smallest details that could turn the battle in their favor. Valor met her in the command chamber, his usual calm presence tempered by the tension of war. "The rebels are moving faster than we expected," he said. "They intend to strike the eastern colonies tonight. If they succeed, thousands could die and the alliance will collapse." Lyra studied the maps projected on the hollow table. Small dots represented enemy ships and ground forces moving like shadows across the star systems. Her eyes traced their paths, searching for weaknesses. "We cannot fight them head-on," she said, her voice steady. "We need ambushes, diversions, and speed. The human advantage is adaptability. We will use it." Valor raised an eyebrow. "And you think humans can turn the tide against such numbers?" Lyra smiled faintly. "I know humans can, and I will prove it." By dusk, a mixed fleet of Zalvar and Erythian ships moved toward the eastern colonies, following the plan Lyra had devised. Small, agile ships led the attack, striking quickly and retreating before the enemy could respond. Lyra had positioned her forces in hidden sectors, using gravity wells and asteroid belts to mask movements. The enemy, confident in their superior numbers, did not anticipate the human tactics. The first battle began in the skies above a mining colony. Rebel ships descended in formation, their weapons ready, but Lyra's fleet was waiting. Human pilots, following unconventional flight patterns, wove through the attack, striking where the rebels were weakest. Lyra herself guided one squadron, giving precise instructions in real time. The rebels were caught off guard. Their formations were broken, ships scattered, and their coordination collapsed. Lyra directed small teams to disable communications, preventing the enemy from calling reinforcements. Every move was calculated, yet executed with the spontaneity that only a human could manage. On the ground, the fight was no less intense. Rebel soldiers had landed, aiming to seize control of the colony's power systems. Lyra led a strike team of human and Zalvar soldiers, moving through narrow streets and alleys. She anticipated ambushes, countered attacks, and used the environment to her advantage. A group of rebels emerged from behind a supply depot, energy rifles raised. Lyra dove to the side, rolling behind cover, and fired with precision. The soldiers behind her followed her lead, moving as a coordinated unit under her direction. In minutes, the enemy was surrounded, captured, or forced to retreat. When the smoke cleared, the colony was safe. Civilians emerged from hiding, cheering the defenders. Lyra stood among them, her face smudged with dust and grime, her eyes bright with determination. Soldiers whispered her name with awe, the human who fought like no one had ever seen before. Word of the victory spread quickly across the alliance. Propaganda, carefully crafted to avoid revealing the full scope of the human tactics, portrayed Lyra as a hero, a symbol of hope and resilience. Even Valor found himself speaking openly about her skill and courage. "She is more than a bride," he told the council. "She is a commander, a strategist, and a fighter. Her human mind has saved thousands today." But Lyra did not allow herself to celebrate. The war was far from over. The rebels had retreated to fortified positions on a nearby moon, and intelligence suggested that their leader was planning a larger strike on the capital itself. Lyra knew that the next battle would be far more dangerous. That evening, she convened with her commanders. Holomaps displayed enemy positions, patrol routes, and potential reinforcements. Lyra's plan was bold, a multi-pronged assault that relied on speed, deception, and the human ability to improvise. She assigned tasks to squads based on their strengths, carefully balancing risk and reward. "Remember," she told them, her voice calm but firm, "the enemy expects conventional tactics. We will not be conventional. We will move fast, strike where they are weakest, and adapt to whatever they throw at us. Humans have survived impossible odds for centuries. Now we will show the galaxy why." As night fell, the fleet departed for the rebel stronghold. Lyra's heart beat steadily, her mind alert to every detail. The moon's surface glimmered below, dotted with enemy fortifications and energy barriers. Sensors indicated patrol patterns, but Lyra knew the rebels would change them as soon as they suspected an attack. She divided her forces into 3 teams. The first, led by herself, would create a diversion on the northern flank. The second, under Vaylor's command, would strike the central defenses. The third, composed of elite human soldiers, would infiltrate the enemy's command center. The operation began with precision. Lyra's squad moved silently across the northern ridges, avoiding detection while setting energy charges near supply depots. Rebel patrols approached, but Lyra anticipated their routes, using shadows and terrain to her advantage. When the first alarm sounded, it was exactly as planned. The rebels rushed toward the diversion, leaving their central defenses exposed. Vaylor's team struck the center, disabling key weapon systems and creating chaos. Human infiltrators slipped into the command center, bypassing guards with clever improvisation. Lyra moved like a shadow, striking where needed, using her agility and skill to neutralize threats. The rebels were disoriented. Their superior numbers could not compensate for the confusion and speed of the human-led forces. Lyra coordinated each squad, giving commands, adjusting strategies, and predicting enemy moves. Her ability to adapt in real time made her nearly untouchable on the battlefield. Hours later, the rebel stronghold was under control. Leaders were captured, weapons depots destroyed, and the remaining forces fled into space. Lyra's name became a legend among the soldiers. They whispered of the human who moved like a storm, who anticipated every attack, and who inspired courage in even the most fearful hearts. Back at the palace, Vaylor formally recognized her contribution. "Lyra," he said, his voice sincere, "you have not only saved lives, you have changed the course of this war. You have shown the strength of humans in ways that no one could have imagined." Lyra's response was quiet but firm. "Humans have always survived. We have always adapted. And we will continue to do so, as long as there is a reason to fight." The war was far from over, but Lyra had proven that humans were a force to be reckoned with. Her presence on the battlefield had changed the balance of power, showing that courage, intelligence, and adaptability could triumph over even the most organized forces. In the days that followed, Lyra continued to lead, train, and inspire. She worked tirelessly to strengthen the alliance, forging bonds between humans and Zalvar soldiers. Her strategies became legendary, her leadership respected, and her courage admired. But beyond the battlefield, she understood the larger challenge. The war was not just about victory, it was about securing lasting peace. Every move, every decision, had consequences that extended far beyond the immediate fight. Lyra knew that diplomacy, intelligence, and careful planning would be just as important as combat. One evening, as she gazed out over the capital city, Lyra allowed herself a moment of reflection. The twin moons shone in the sky, casting a silver light over the palace. She thought of the humans on distant worlds, of the history that had shaped them, of the resilience that ran through their species. And she thought of the future. The war was only one battle in a much larger struggle, but it was a battle that humans could win, not because they were stronger, but because they refused to be defeated. Lyra felt a fire burning within her, a determination that would not be quenched. She would continue to fight, continue to lead, and continue to prove that humans, when underestimated, could achieve greatness. The rebels had been defeated for now, but the galaxy was vast, and danger was never far away. Lyra knew that her role in the war was only beginning, that greater challenges awaited, and that her human strength and ingenuity would be tested in ways she could not yet imagine. And she welcomed it. For Lyra, the human bride had become more than a symbol of peace. She had become a force of nature, a strategist, a warrior, and a leader. The galaxy would remember the day humans were no longer underestimated. And when the next battle came, Lyra would be ready, fighting not just for herself, not just for the Alliance, but for humanity itself. The war had raged across the border worlds for months, testing every alliance, every strategy, and every soldier. Lyra, the human bride, had already proven herself in battle after battle, earning respect, awe, and even fear among the Zalvar and Erythian forces. Yet the ultimate test awaited, the rebels' final assault on the Erythian capital itself. The city was tense. Citizens hurried to reinforce barricades, patrols doubled their rounds, and the air was thick with anticipation. At the heart of it all, Lyra moved with calm determination, her presence inspiring confidence. Soldiers, both human and Zalvar, followed her lead, trusting her judgment as they prepared for the incoming storm. Prince Valor met her in the central command hall, maps and holograms illuminating the room. His usual composure was mixed with worry. "This will be their largest attack," he said. "If we fail, the Alliance collapses. Thousands could die." Lyra nodded, her dark eyes steady. "We will not fail. Humans survive against impossible odds because we adapt, because we think, and because we refuse to give up. Today will be no different." She spent the day coordinating defenses, organizing ambushes, and preparing evacuation routes for civilians. Every detail mattered. She had studied the rebels' movements, predicted their attack patterns, and devised counter-strategies that combined Zalvar technology with human improvisation. By evening, the enemy fleet appeared on the horizon, dark silhouettes against the setting sun. Lyra and Valor surveyed the incoming force from the palace's observation tower. Ships of every size moved with precision, but Lyra noticed subtle imperfections, signs that the rebels had grown overconfident. She seized upon them. "Divide the fleet," she instructed. "Send half to engage directly while the other half flanks from the north. Use the asteroid belts for cover. Draw them in, then strike where they are weakest." The orders were executed with speed and precision. Lyra moved with her strike team to the northern flank, her heart steady but her mind calculating every possible outcome. The battle began with a thunderous roar as ships clashed in orbit above the city. Rebel ships were destroyed or forced to retreat as human-led squadrons darted through the chaos, striking with unexpected angles and speed. Lyra's strategies worked like clockwork. The rebels had anticipated conventional tactics, but humans did not fight conventionally. Lyra adapted continuously, changing formations mid-battle, exploiting gaps, and directing squads with a clarity and decisiveness that inspired awe. On the ground, the battle was no less fierce. Rebels had landed near the palace, hoping to seize the central command. Lyra led a squad of elite human and Zalvar soldiers, moving through the streets with precision. She anticipated ambushes, turned traps against the enemy, and used the city itself to her advantage. Narrow alleyways, collapsed buildings, and hidden passages allowed her forces to outmaneuver the larger enemy numbers. Lyra's presence on the battlefield was electrifying. Soldiers said she moved like a storm, striking swiftly, disappearing, then appearing again where she was needed most. Her ability to read the enemy, improvise, and inspire her troops turned the tide of every skirmish. Even the most experienced Zalvar generals were astonished by her skill. Hours passed, and the rebels began to falter. Their coordination collapsed under the pressure of the human-led defenses. Lyra coordinated the final strike, a combined orbital and ground assault that would break the enemy's command center and force them into surrender or retreat. The human strike team infiltrated the rebel command hub, moving with silent precision. Lyra led them through the corridors, disarming traps and neutralizing guards with skill and efficiency. They reached the central chamber, where the rebel leaders attempted to coordinate their remaining forces. "You cannot stop us," one shouted, defiance in his voice. Lyra stepped forward, calm and resolute. "We already have," she said. "Humans survive, humans adapt, and humans never surrender." Within minutes, the rebel leadership was captured, their communications destroyed, and their forces scattered. The city was saved, and the largest threat to the Alliance eliminated. Soldiers cheered, citizens rejoiced, and the twin empires looked at Lyra with a mixture of admiration and reverence. Back at the palace, Prince Valor formally addressed the council. "This victory is not mine alone," he said. "It belongs to the human bride, Lyra, Her strategies, courage, and leadership have saved our worlds. She has proven that humans are not merely fragile, they are formidable, intelligent, and unyielding. Lyra remained composed, though she allowed herself a small, proud smile. She had fought not for recognition, but for survival, for peace, and for the future. Yet she understood the impact of her actions. Humans, often underestimated, had finally earned respect across the galaxy. In the days following the battle, Lyra worked tirelessly to secure lasting peace. The captured rebels were brought before a council of leaders from both empires. Lyra advocated for fair treatment, for rehabilitation rather than revenge, and for strategies that would prevent further conflict. She spoke with wisdom, clarity, and authority, earning the trust of leaders who had once doubted her. She also strengthened the alliance itself. Human ingenuity and adaptability became integral to military planning, governance, and diplomacy. Zalvar and Erythian soldiers learned new tactics from human methods, and humans gained access to advanced technology and strategic knowledge from their allies. Together, they formed a coalition stronger than any single empire could be alone. Yet Lyra never forgot the lessons of war. She trained soldiers, shared strategies, and mentored leaders, ensuring that humanity's influence would endure long after the immediate threat had passed. She emphasized creativity, adaptability, and courage, qualities humans possessed in abundance. As the alliance stabilized, Lyra turned her attention to her personal life. Her marriage to Prince Valar, once a tool of political necessity, had grown into a partnership built on mutual respect. Valar had witnessed her intelligence, her courage, and her unwavering commitment to justice. He admired her as a leader and as a human who refused to be underestimated. One evening, they walked together in the palace gardens. The glowing flowers illuminated their path, casting soft light over the city below. Lyra reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from a human underestimated by the galaxy to a commander and symbol of hope. Valar spoke quietly. "You have changed everything, Lyra, not just the war, but the way our people see humans. You have proven that courage and intelligence are as important as strength and numbers." Lyra looked at him, her expression calm. "Humans survive because we adapt, because we think, and because we refuse to give up. We do not need to be the strongest to change the course of events. We only need to be willing to act when others hesitate." The prince nodded, understanding fully the truth in her words. Together, they would lead the alliance into a new era, an era where humans were respected, where peace was maintained through wisdom and strength, and where the galaxy had learned never to underestimate humanity. Months passed, and stability returned. Trade resumed, cities were rebuilt, and the scars of war slowly healed. Lyra oversaw reconstruction efforts, using human creativity to solve logistical challenges and improve communication between worlds. Her strategies, both military and political, ensured that peace was not fragile but resilient. The humans' reputation grew. They were no longer seen as fragile observers, but as capable, intelligent, and courageous participants in galactic affairs. Lyra's name became a symbol of hope, strength, and resilience. Children across the Alliance learned of the human bride who fought like a god of war, inspiring generations to come. Yet Lyra remained humble. She knew that true leadership was not about glory, but about responsibility. Every decision she made was guided by the desire to protect life, maintain peace, and ensure that humanity's place in the galaxy was secure. One day, as she addressed a gathering of soldiers and citizens, Lyra spoke with clarity and conviction. "Today, we stand together, not as separate empires, not as humans or Zalvar, not as rulers or subjects, but as a united force. We have faced war and we have survived. We have faced doubt and we have proven our worth. And we will continue to face challenges, knowing that courage, intelligence, and determination can overcome any obstacle." The crowd erupted in cheers, not just for her words, but for the truth behind them. Humans had survived, humans had adapted, and humans had led. The galaxy had seen it with its own eyes. Lyra looked out over the horizon, the twin suns setting behind the mountains. She thought of the countless battles fought, the strategies devised, the lives saved, and the peace forged from chaos. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not by force alone, but by courage, adaptability, and unwavering determination. And in that moment, Lyra knew that the journey was not over. Challenges would come, wars would rise again, and new threats would emerge. But humans would be ready. They had learned to survive, to fight, and to lead when the galaxy underestimated them. The marriage that had once been a tool for peace had become a symbol of unity, a testament to the strength of humans and their allies. And Lyra, the human who had fought like a god of war, had become a legend, proof that even the smallest species could change the fate of worlds. As night fell over the capital, Lyra stood on the palace balcony, the city calm beneath her. She felt the fire of determination burning bright within her. The galaxy had seen what humans could do. And Lyra knew that, whatever challenges lay ahead, humans would continue to rise, to adapt, and to fight, not for glory but for the future of peace. The war had ended. The peace had been won. And humanity, once underestimated, would forever be remembered as a force to be reckoned with. Lyra turned to Valor, who stood beside her, and smiled. Together, they would lead the Alliance into a new era, one where courage, intelligence, and unity would define the galaxy. And the human bride, who had once been doubted and underestimated, had proven that when humans fight, they fight like gods.